I'm excited to get to our keynote speaker. So I'd like to welcome up, first I'm going to welcome Brenda Donis, who will do our official introduction, but CarlyKoppes, because if you allow us to, we like to record our presentations and put them on our YouTube channel. See, we really do have a little tech blood. So thank you for being here, Carly and Brenda. Come on up.
Thanks, Glenda. All right, is it an even number year or an odd number year? I would say, is it an odd year or an even year, but I'm afraid you won't answer odd, so I clarified. Is it an even number year or an odd number year?
Even.
Even. And what happens in an even number year?
Election.
We vote, right? It's elections. You might not hear about it as much because this isn't a presidential year. And so, you know, that usually gets a lot of attention. But for some of us, this election year is really important. There's people in this room that think it's super important. I might be one of them because I'm on the ballot. So it's super important to me that you know it's an election year. Matt Turner, who's in the back, his boss is on the ballot. The sheriff is on the ballot this year. Carly is on the ballot this year. We have two commissioners that are on the ballot this year. So you have a lot of local officials that are going to be elected this year. So it's really important that you know that. And there's a lot of other positions as well. There's positions for Colorado House, Senate, congressional district. There's just so many important things that happen on every single ballot. And it's your constitutional right to vote. You have that right to do it. And gosh, we're just getting ready to have a primary election, and then the general election will be in November. And so it's important for you to know that you have that right. But when you vote, don't you want to know that that ballot is doing what you think it's doing, that it's going somewhere, and that it's being counted correctly, and that it's not getting put in a bucket that you don't want it in? If you watch the news right now, all you're hearing about is election integrity. Election integrity, election integrity. It's really important that we have confidence that our vote is doing what we think it should be doing. And there is no better person in Weld County to be talking to us about this, and there's no better time right now to be hearing and learning about election integrity than right before the primary election. And so it is my honor to introduce you to our clerk and reporter. She started in the office in 2004, so she's been in this business for 18 years. She received her Colorado election official certification in 2007, and then she received her national certification or certified elections and registration administrator designation in 2014. She knows what she's doing. She doesn't just manage the elections office. She's also doing everything related to motor vehicle and the recorder's office. So she's got a wealth of knowledge. She's just done an excellent job talking about what her office is able to do and providing us confidence that we need that our ballot is doing what we think it should be doing. But it's my privilege to introduce you to CarlyKoppes so that she can tell you everything she knows about election integrity. So come on up, Carly.
I haven't heard anything in the news about election integrity. I'm not quite really sure what you're talking about there. No. It's only been my life for the past, oh gosh, 18 years. But thank you for the introduction. And she is correct. She is on the ballot for sure. Her name is spelled correctly. It is on there. Sometimes, depending on what district you are in, she could be at the very bottom of the front page or on the back of the back page. But it's okay. It's for sure there. Yes, Reeves is for sure there. Mine also made it on there, so we're covered. So please make sure and support Brenda. She's done a really good job. You know, she had a great office to take over, obviously, after this great gentleman over here, and she's not only, you know, done what you did, and she's also continued to just keep rising that bar, which is exactly what I know Chris wanted her to do. So we've been very blessed, as you all know. So I am CarlyKoppes. I am your clerk and recorder, and I would obviously be amiss if I did not introduce the person who has helped me be super successful over the last 7.5 years. You all know him, and he's in this room. He has been not only a fantastic coworker for me over the last 18 years, but he really truly has become family. And so here's Rudy Santos. Hi, Neil. How are you doing? My brother says hello. I will. So Neil and my brother actually went to school since elementary all the way up, or middle school all the way up.
Middle, I think.
Yeah, middle all the way up. They were the same height at one point, and then all of a sudden Neil just went boom, and went a little bit taller than my brother. But he did want me to say hello to you today. Now, elections integrity. I'll get into that, but just real quickly, I want to say another thing that Brenda and I are trying to work on as well. Not only is there questions about things that may possibly be going wrong in the elections world, but we're also seeing potential attempts of fraud in the deed world as well. And so one thing that Brenda and I are trying to collaborate on right now, the technology isn't quite there yet, but we're still hammering away. We'll still keep pushing our vendors to try and provide it, is title fraud, a kind of announcement so that you as a consumer could sign up. So in case somebody tries to record a deed in my office, you would then be able to be notified because obviously that's something that we don't want to happen. We actually had a clerk and recorder in Pueblo. Somebody filed a $1 million lien against him, and it took him 7 years in the courts to get it off. So we are wanting to make sure in that realm in the recording department that somebody isn't trying to fraudulently file something in our office, then obviously would be trickled down over to Brenda's office and so forth and so on. So that is another thing that we are kind of trying to work on. Like I said, our vendor isn't quite there yet. They do have a product, but it's not up to the level that I think either of us are comfortable with right now, but we are definitely working on that. In motor vehicle, obviously we are extremely busy. We're coming up on one of our busiest seasons, which Memorial Weekend through the rest of the summer, we see a high volume of car sales. As you know, Mr. Yoder is definitely going to know that his team is ramping up rather much for the upcoming sales season. But when it comes to elections, there's definitely been a lot of conversations around elections since honestly 2000. Really since 2000 has been this kind of questioning of how elections and how the results are made. Who remembers 2000? What happened then?
Push the door.
That's right. And what state was in the center of that storm? Florida. Who remembers hanging chads? Oh yeah. But poor guy with his eyes bugged out, like that's forever ingrained in my brain. And I was just a freshman in high school at that time, but it is something that has been a question behind some people's minds since that election. Of course, then we had the 2004 election, and then the 2008, and so forth and so on. We really saw it intensify though after the 2016 election. We had a lot of people questioning the election after that. And then obviously 2020 came around, and then that kind of, blew up a little bit more with people questioning, how do elections work? How do myself and my team actually administer elections and have the safeguards and protections to make sure that your vote, your private vote, is counted exactly how you have marked it? For me, what makes me come to my job every single day and put 110% in is, for me, your ballot is your sole access to our living and breathing government, period. You have no better access to voice your opinion than your ballot. It is the greatest equalizer we have in society because your ballot doesn't know if you have 2 cents in the bank, and it doesn't know if you have 2 million in the bank. That's what makes you as equal to anybody else in the United States. So that's how important elections are to me, and I know that's how important elections are to Rudy, and how important our team understands the gravity of what we do on a day-to-day basis in elections. So what do we do when it's not election time? Like right now, it's election time. So what do we do on January 2nd? What do we do on December 31st? Well, what we're doing is we are doing voter list maintenance. Who has heard some things about our voter list? Anybody? That's always an interesting topic. So our voter registration lists, we update those on a daily basis. And this is where not only is my elections team integrated into other departments like Brenda's in the assessor's department, we have a great working relationship with one of her employees, Dee. Fantastic. She helps us a lot. Why is that important to have that relationship with other county departments, such as the assessors? Because we have to make sure that the addresses that we are putting in our voter registration are one, valid, and two, residential. Because you cannot register yourself at a commercial address. You cannot register yourself at a vacant lot. There's some exemptions from that, but you can't register yourself at a vacant lot. And obviously you can't register yourself at a PO box. That's why it's important that we are maintaining our voter registration list with accurate address information. Not only do we work with Brenda's office, but we also work with the USPS, because obviously we have to make sure that if you give me an address, it can be delivered to. If it can't be, and because they require a PO box, or they require an apartment number, or they require something else, we need to know that. And that's why we have a great working relationship with our United States Post Office as well. And we work the National Change of Address List. The National Change of Address List, everybody who moves, I guarantee you will make sure that they will update their magazine subscriptions before they update their voter registration. Guarantee. Because nobody ever remembers, oh yeah, I need to update my voter registration. But gosh darn it, I'm gonna get my better home in Vernon. So that's why we work the National Change of Address information from USPS. We get that on a monthly basis as well. So that's what we're doing in the months where we're not actually administrating the elections. We're working the national change of address. We're verifying that the addresses are valid. Now, another question we have is, how do you make sure that they're a US citizen? A couple of things. One, do you remember when you got your driver's license? What documentation did you have to provide to get your driver's license? You had to provide either your US citizenship documentation, your US birth certificate, some form to prove that you are a US citizen to get your driver's license, correct? So when you are registering to vote, you are required to give us your driver's license number or the last four of your social security number. When we enter your information into the voter registration system, we put your driver's license number in, or we put your social security number in, and automatically in real time, we are hitting the Department of Revenue's driver's license system, and it's validating that yes, this is a valid driver's license number. Also, if you give us your social security number, that is hitting the federal social security database and also saying that yes, that is valid. So the two, you got a state level department and you have a federal level department that are already verified that you are a US citizen. That is how we are re-verifying that you are a qualified citizen to be on our voter registration roll. Now there's a third piece of that. When you do register to vote, you actually are attesting to the second degree of perjury that you are a US citizen and eligible to do that. I got ding dong.
You did, not my ding dong.
Oh, it's Robert coming in to join. That's what it is. But I'm glad, but ding dong, that's kind of one thing that we can, and how we validate that we only have qualified US citizens on our voter registration rolls. So we validate the address, we're validating that you are actually eligible to vote. Now, if some of you remember, back in 2013, Colorado passed the Colorado ID Act, Senate Bill 251. What that was allowing for non-US citizens to get driver's license. Well, because of that, we put in precautions at the Department of Revenue that they mark in their system. And even if you look at one of their IDs, it has a big black box on it. The Clerks Association, we were the ones that made sure that that was in the bill. One of our wins that we were able to get is, if you've ever dealt with a legislator, you take every small little win you can get, especially when we're in a single party control. And we got that win there. And so when you look, you will see that there's a black bar on there that says not for use for federal identification or voting. And so if somebody tries to use that driver's license number, when we hit the Department of Revenue system, it comes back to us saying, not good. And that person is not registered. So that's how we do that part of it. So like I already said, we work the national change of address. Another piece that we do, and sorry for the title of this report, there's just what it is. We get the death list. We get on a monthly basis the Social Security death list from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. Now, if some of you probably know this, but every single mortuary is required to report, and also county coroners are required to report to the Colorado Department of Health and Environment the guests that come into their services. That information is passed down to us to make sure that we can remove them from the voter registration rolls. Now, another thing that we do a little bit extra in Weld County is because we have good working relationships with our local mortuaries, we also are able to get that information directly from them or just through their websites, because all of them do a really good job of memorializing their people on their websites. And so we go on to there on a weekly basis and also just re-verify. So again, we're trying to cast as big a net as we possibly can to make sure that our voter registration rolls in Colorado and in Weld County are as clean as they possibly can. Now, another thing that Colorado has done, and the reason why we are held to such a high standard in the elections community, not only in the United States, but not only nationally, but internationally as well, is we also were one of the founding members of a program called ERIC. Now, there's also been some misinformation about the ERIC program. Colorado was one of 11 that started that program. With that, we now have an interstate agreement that the state of Colorado, Secretary of State, and let's say Kansas, Secretary of State, a couple times a year, we will share our voter registration rolls with each other and see if there are people that are the same registered in the different states. Now, when that happens, obviously, whoever has the newest voter registration record gets to keep that, and the state that has the older one, we cancel that. That is also what we do after every single election as well. In ERIC, when we have your voter history then tied to your voter record. And that is how we are also able to, with state AGs, prosecute anybody who has attempted or did cast more than one ballot. And fortunately, here in Weld County, we do have a great district attorney's office, and we have been able to successfully prosecute people who have attempted. There's always attempts of fraud. So let me make that clear. There's always attempts of fraud. However, we have so many checks and balances, we catch that attempts of fraud. And that's why it's so important to have a good DA and have a good relationship with the district attorney's office, because then we are able to gather kind of the evidence for the case and hand it over to the district attorney, and then they do their internal investigation. And then, in 2016, we had a pretty high-profile case come out of Weld County. We had a former state Colorado GOP chair. He attempted to vote his ex-wife's ballot, and due to the fact of our checks and balances within our process, we were able to catch that. We gave that over to the district attorney, and we were able to successfully prosecute. He was found guilty, and in 2020, he also lost his appeal. So we do take it very seriously. So when people try and say, oh, well, you guys are just ignoring all of this other evidence, that's not true at all. I have read every single thing that has come out since the 2020 elections. Of my life, I've just been reading this information. There's a lot of stuff that's just not accurate or not correct. And so what we do when we have those type of situations is, like I said, we make sure that all of our checks and balances are operating, not only during election time with our voter registration, but during that time, we are going through and making sure all of our processes and procedures are in place, and making sure that if we have lessons learned from the last election, we're making those tweaks and we're making those improvements. I'm very proud of our elections team here in the elections, or in Weld County, just due to the fact we are considered to be one of the top in the state, and we like to keep it that way. We've worked really, really hard in our processes and procedures to earn that reputation. And when it was going on in 2020, and a lot of states were trying to make that shift to the Colorado election model, we were giving out our processes and procedures to all of these different states to try and help them out to be successful. Now, you may be wondering, why are we in the election model that we are? So real quickly, how long do you think Colorado's actually had mail ballots? Rudy cannot answer this. You can't answer any question, Rudy. 92. So 1992, Colorado has had mail ballots. Now, why is that significant? Well, now in 2020 and from 2022, since 2013, we have been an all mail ballot state. So how did we get from us just starting to have excused absentee in 1992 to 2013 and forward being an all mail ballot state? Well, it isn't because somebody like myself decided to do that. It's actually because we listened to you as the voters. The voters are the one that has driven us moving our election model to where we are today. So in 1992, we had excused absentee. We had the last election in 2004 as an excused absentee. In 2005, the law was changed to where you didn't have to have an excuse to actually get a mail ballot. Then it kind of rapidly changed over the time. So since 2005, then anybody was able to request a mail-in ballot. We saw in Weld County, especially, a huge jump of people taking advantage of getting that mail ballot. Then come 2007, we introduced a law, and that was passed, or legislation into law that was passed in 2007. We then went to what was called, if you remember, the permanent mail-in voter list. So then in the beginning of 2007, our office mailed every single voter on the registration rolls a letter asking you, do you want to always get a mail ballot? Or do you just want to get it for this, this year cycle? Or do you not want to get it at all? Well, we were actually in Weld County, one of the top counties that had the largest permanent mail-in list. A lot of voters in Weld County were like, yes, please give me that mail ballot. That is so much easier and it's a lot more convenient for me. So then from 2007 to 2013, we in Weld County, by the time 2013 happened, when we were doing that mail-in list, asking people to join the permanent mail-in list, we were over 75% of our voter registration roll had requested at that point to receive their mail ballot. We were one of the highest counties percentage-wise in the state. So that's what prompted the 2013 bill to change us to an all-mail ballot state. Now, I do have to clarify, we're not like Washington or Oregon. Those are true mail ballot states. Your only option is to vote by mail ballot. In Colorado, what makes us unique is we did a hybrid. So not only will you automatically get your mail ballot, but you still have the choice of actually going and voting in person with our voter service and polling centers. So that's why we're not a true mail ballot, we're a hybrid. But it's really important to make that distinction because news that comes out of Washington and Oregon, they get us confused with that a little bit. But you still have that option to come in and vote in person. Obviously, one of the biggest myths that has been going around since the 2020 election is we all only vote by machine. That's not actually accurate. Colorado hasn't been vote by machine for quite a long time, since the early 2000s. One of the biggest things that I've had questions about and people keep kind of hammering me on is I only want to vote paper ballot. Just to be clear, all 64 counties in Colorado only vote by paper ballots. Now you might be going, wait a second, if I go to a voter service and polling center, you have machines there. Well, what the heck are those? Well, what are those? Those are required by the ADA Act. We have to have what are referred to as ballot marking devices. So all that does is assist you in marking your paper ballot. So you can go to one of those machines, we will pull up your ballot style, you will vote it however you want, and when you hit print, it literally prints a paper ballot for you, and then you put that into the ballot box, and you have cast your paper ballot. So in Colorado, there are no voting machines. Now there are voting machines in like Georgia and a couple of these others, and they are different styles. In the early 2000s, we did have what was actually a true voting machine where we had the memory cards and all of that, but we have transitioned out of those. And again, we're now solely paper ballot on ballot marking devices. So again, there's a big distinction with that. And I know there's a lot of concerns, especially coming from the state of Colorado. We've had a couple of people in my position that have decided to do some things that are going to be decided in the court if they were right or not. And there's been a lot of misconceptions around the voting equipment. It is now, let's see, what time is it? 12:57 p.m. And Rudy and myself can both guarantee that our voting equipment here in Weld County has never been connected to the internet through Wi-Fi or any other means. The reason why we know that is because we do, again, have checks and balances throughout our process. So this week we're doing what is called the pre-logic and accuracy testing. What exactly is that? Well, what we are required to do per the law is bring in all of our voting equipment that we are going to use for the June 28th primary election. We have our, what we refer to as our warehouse crew. Our warehouse crew is consistent of one Democrat, one unaffiliated, and one Republican, along with one of my designated staff. And what they are required to do is test the ballot marking devices to make sure that they are correctly working, and to make sure that any type of internet connection or Wi-Fi capability is and has remained off, and that it is not going to be and has not going to be connected in any fashion to be manipulated or hacked. So during that, not only are we testing those and making sure that that's marking correctly, we're also making sure that the ADA function of that is working as well. Now, the ballot marking devices that we have, we are very happy with how they work with the ADA, and we have done some testing and some help with our local ADA communities. So if you have a sip and puff, you are able to connect to our ballot marking device. If you have paddles, you're able to actually directly connect. And so again, it is really important that we're giving each voter that ability to cast their ballot independent from anybody else. And so that's what we are doing this week. So far with everything, I think we're probably going to be done here in just a little bit, but all of our voting equipment is working exactly how it is supposed to. Now, next week on May 25th and 26th is the public logic and accuracy testing. So of course, it doesn't really make sense if I just stand up here and tell you, oh, trust me, I've got it. But what we do is we actually bring in public to do some testing as well, to again, verify what I'm saying. So you don't just have to take my word. You know, one of the best quotes that I've been given and saying is, you can trust me, but verify me as well. So trust but verify. And so next week we have the public logic and accuracy testing, where we have an appointed Republican from the Republican Party. We have an appointed Democrat from the Democratic Party. Again, these are your local party chairs that are making this appointment. And then they were given 25 ballots each to mark however they want to mark. And then my test deck is going to be over 1,000, because just for this primary election, because how complicated Weld County got redistricted, if you guys paid attention to that, they carved this up really well. We got a whole bunch of new House districts and Senate districts. We went from 1 congressional district to 4 congressional districts. Just due to that fact, I have 60 ballot styles for this election. I got 30 Democratic ballot styles and I got 30 Republican ballot styles for this election. You want to talk about expensive? It's expensive. Elections are costly. So with my test deck alone, what I'm required to do is to vote a single ballot style as many possible ways as a voter can vote it. So when we have contested races, and it's more than just 2, so we have a couple that have 3, we have to figure out all the different combinations for the whole entire ballot. So my test deck alone is going to be over 1,000 different ballots. So we're going to test over 1,000 ballots on my end. The parties will have a total of 50 ballots on their end, and they're going to be able to, like I said, mark it however they want. Now, with their 25, each representative has to hand tally their own voting that they just did. Then what we do is we pull up our voting equipment and our scanners. We print out what is called the 0 report, and that verifies that there are no current ballots on there. Once we do that, each individual party will run their ballots, and we will run the tally in total of how the voting equipment has cast their ballot. How many times do you think the human hand count was wrong versus the machine hand, or the machine count? Every time there's an error, it's with the hand tally. We have not had a single issue with the 25 ballots for the Republicans or the Democrats or my test deck with the voting equipment. Every single time is because of a hand count error. Every single time. Now, you were saying 3%. That is actually correct. When you hand count paper ballots, that is a national average of error. That is acceptable, is 3%. Now, in my world, 0% is what is acceptable. 3% is not acceptable. I have to be dead on. And so when people are coming and asking me, oh, you need to do a hand count, or you need to, you know, that's the only way that we should be running an election. So you're accepting that you are okay with a 3% error margin, because I'm certainly not. I want to be dead on, because again, this is your vote. This is your voice in our living and breathing government. I better be 100% correct every single time. Hand counting is not the answer. It is very challenging, especially, like I just said, we are in a primary election. I have 60 ballot styles. That is very complicated to hand count. You don't even want to know what we're estimating the ballot styles for the 2022 election. Anybody want to take a guess? Again, Rudy can't answer. Anybody want to take a guess in 2020, how many in that general election ballot styles we had in Weld County? Chris is racking his brain over there.
It's gotta be in the hundreds, Carly.
We had over 350 different ballot styles.
Wow.
350 different ballot styles in the 2020 election. And people would like for me to hand count that. Okay, I can hand count that if you would like to wait for the results for 3 months at least.
You might say something about why there is a different ballot style,
Yeah.
because you've got school districts,
Yep.
you've got cities and towns, you've got county races. All of those things, depending on where you live, you get to vote for the races that pertain to you.
That's correct.
Down
And
the
that,
street, your neighbor who may have a line across their, may have a completely different ballot.
yes, and that's why precincts are what they are. So in a precinct, we are only allowed one congressional district, one state house district, and one state senate district. That in and of itself creates really small areas, and we can only have no more than 1,500 voters in a precinct. So that's what bases our first initial ballot style. And then as Chris was saying, then you have to overlay the school districts. How many people know how many school districts are in Weld County? 17. We have 17 different school districts. So that automatically, so we have over 200 precincts. Now we have 17 school districts on top of that. Then I have water. Then we have sanitation. I mean, all of you guys, school districts, municipalities, all of those layers, that all gets on top of each other. And again, that's how we base our ballot styles off of. So since the 2021 redistricting that we finished in January 2022, I am projecting probably for this November election, because like I said, now we have four congressional districts. We have way more House districts and Senate districts than we did even in 2020. We still have 17 school districts. We still have 32 municipalities. You guys, we are the #1 county that with special districts. There's no other county that has more special districts than we do here in Weld County, which makes our ballot extremely complicated. And that's why we end up with so many different ballot styles, which again, why it is not really capable of having any type of air to have that, because I'm sure all of you guys know, if you're from the Greeley area, what was the result of a couple of our city council races? We had, just within recent memory, we had one that was decided by 1 vote. We had another in the city of Greeley that was decided by 2 votes. And if we would have hand counted that, we would have had a 3% error rate. We would have, it wouldn't have been, it could have completely changed and flipped the results of those elections. So that is why it's so important that we're doing the testing that we're doing right now in the logic and accuracy, the public logic and accuracy next week. And if we don't pass that, it stops and we have to go back and redo it. So if we don't pass the public testing, it's a sign off that our equipment is working exactly how it's supposed to. Now come June 6th, that is when you guys need to be paying attention to your mailbox, because that is the week that the mail ballots for the June election are going to be headed out. So if you're a registered Republican, Democrat, or unaffiliated, that is when your ballots will be sent to you. So make sure starting June 6th, you start looking for those ballots. We were successful in sending our military and overseas ballots out this past weekend. We send over a little over 1,000 out. And so now we're up to the general public. And so those will be sent out, like I said, June 6th. Now we do have 17 drop boxes that are secure, and we do have video surveillance around them. Yes, we do monitor those as well. We do have those all around Weld County, because you guys know we're quite large in Weld County. And so we do have 17 all over in very well-known places to make sure that it is convenient for people to be able to drop those off. Those will also open on June 6th as well, and those will close at 7 p.m. on election night. Then we also have our voter service and polling centers. So if for whatever reason, we'll see which actually wins this election. The dogs took 2021, the cats took 2020. And so if you have a dog or cat, lizard or parrot, because we also have those, destroy your ballot for whatever reason, or you have a toddler who also likes to draw, and now you're like, oh, I may need a clean ballot, or you spilled coffee all over them, you can either come into our office or go to the voter service and polling center and request a replacement ballot during that time. And so, like I said, we'll see which breed of animal wins out to this election because it's every single time we have, and it's quite entertaining. I actually had a gal, because she didn't understand that she could get a replacement. She sent me this really long email with a picture of her black lab puppy with the ballot next to it, just completely shredded and just begging, can I please have another ballot? And I was like, yeah, go here, you're fine. And she said, oh, so I can't get another one? Yes, you can. It's okay. We got you covered.
Is that the same dog that eats the homework?
Yes, and so I can actually vouch for students that potentially have used that excuse because we have seen that quite a bit over my 18 years and Rudy's 21 years in elections. Yeah, please be mindful of your ballot, that you do put it in the safe, secure area, but also don't forget that it's there because we have also seen, I don't know, some people must keep their junk piles like forever because we've actually seen people turn in ballots for elections that happened 5 years ago. And it's like, you're a little late. You missed it by like that much. You're just a little off. Now, how do we know that that was a ballot from 5 years ago? Well, one of the security protocols is on your return envelope with your signature, because remember, you do have to sign it. There is a unique barcode that is assigned to you only for that election. And it gets changed for the next election and changed again for every single election. You will never have that same barcode, nor will another voter in Weld County have that same barcode ever again. So that is another piece of our security protocol. So that's how we know when somebody's trying to turn in a 5-year-old ballot, our signature verification process goes ding, 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 no, wrong election. And so that's when we were able to pull it out and discover that, this person must have been either moving now or has finally attempted to clear out that 5-year-old junk pile in their mail. So again, be mindful of your election ballot. Make sure that you are turning it in and participating. And if you do have an old ballot, you're more than welcome to hand it over to us and we will properly shred it, or you can do that yourself. But with the security protocols, we do have bipartisan teams all the way through the election. So you were essentially what I tell people with our courier teams that go out to the sites to pick up the ballots dropped off there or voted there, you are essentially married at that point. You have a ball and chain connected to each other. And if you go to the restroom, your partner's got to go to the restroom. If you step out to take a breather, your partner's got to step out to take a breather as well. It's time for you to have a snack. Well, I guess you're both having a snack. And so again, when we assign our courier teams, it is 1R and 1D, and essentially they are glued to the hip at that point, and they go through the whole entire process all the time. And again, what we've also done is we've made sure that they are in clearly marked Weld County vehicles, like they will have Weld County elections there. So somebody doesn't think it's some random 2 people cutting out and grabbing ballots and then taking them away. Everything is clearly marked. They all love the fact that they have to wear vests all the time. They either are orange or green or yellow. And so they also are clearly identified and they have name badges as well. Again, to make sure that people know that no, this isn't some type of nefarious act. These people are really doing what they're supposed to be doing. Then they come in, they have this chain of custody. So we've got a ton of seals. If you guys want to know what my seal budget is for every single election, it's about $50,000 essentially for a year of seals for everything that we use, because everything has a seal to it. It's all recorded. And we have the chain of custody, and it all requires 2 signatures. So there's a lot of seals going on all the time. And again, nobody is by themselves. Even myself is not by myself ever in the voting and processing area. Rudy's also never by himself in the voting processing area. It is a no loan zone. Another thing that I like to remind my judges that do come in and volunteer is make sure that if you do have to blow your nose, step outside of the room, because if you blow your nose and then decide to pick your nose, it will be recorded on video surveillance and kept for 25 months. And that is core requested. So yes, Kyle Clark on 9 News could actually get you taking care of your nose business if you desire. Let's not do that. And because every single area in our elections office and the voting process area is covered with video surveillance, there is no area that you could sneak off to, take care of your nose business, and come back without being seen. And we do keep that video surveillance for 25 months here in Weld County. We also never shut our video surveillance off either, because that is how high of integrity we have here in Weld County. We do not shut our video surveillance off for any reason. We're not required to. We will be here once the governor signs a new bill, but prior to that, we've always made sure that our video surveillance is constantly on so that you can see, if you want, our pre-logic and accuracy testing, that you can see the logic and accuracy testing and us setting up and tearing down. All of that is available for the public. If you have a hard time sleeping at night, you're more than welcome to FOIA request it. You're going to have a lot of like, oh my gosh, the more paperwork, more seals. That's all I'm seeing, seals and paperwork. And so with those processes, they're all underneath video surveillance. And so when those teams bring them in, we have another team that's receiving board, and guess what? Bipartisan as well. We have the same number of Ds as we have ours serving on that board. They are checking to make sure that the seals and the logs that are put on at the Dropbox or Voter Service and Polling Center are the exact same ones that they're looking and recording when they get to the receiving board. That's also when we first take the initial count of how many ballots are coming in. So that's important because we have audits on a daily basis for every single process. I know exactly how many ballots came in on one day, how many ballots are processed, where they're at in the process, and how many I should be having in this step at the end of the night. And we have to reconcile to 0 every single night we're processing. And that's what we do here in Weld County. So we have the receiving board. They're the ones that date stamp it. They make sure that everything is counted for. We record that number. So we have our first initial audit internally. Then it goes to the signature verification. Now they are the most important part to protect against the attempts of fraud. And that is where we catch attempts of fraud. And so they are the ones that are going to verify the signature that you have on your outer envelope to the one that we have on record. Now, how many do you think I have on record of you? Every single one since the moment you registered to vote in the state of Colorado, not just in Weld County. So let's take example, I'm going to pick on Rudy Smart. So let's take example Rudy. He originally registered over in Logan County because he's from Sterling. He made the right choice and headed west. And when he did that, when we had him registered to vote here in 2008, we actually pulled his Logan County voter registration record into Weld County and merged it with his Weld County one. So not only do I have all the signatures of Rudy from his appearance into Weld County, but I have all of his voter registration and signatures from Logan County as well. So that's also how we make sure our voter registration records are clean. There's only one record per voter in the state of Colorado that is active. And so if you move from Denver County to Weld County, we're going to pull your Denver County into Weld County, vice versa. You move from here to Larimer County is going to pull you over there, and everything with it is going to go. So I have every single Colorado signature on there. So when you sign, now, yes, we do understand. I don't know about you, but my 18-year-old Carly signature is not like my 36-year-old Carly signature. And I'm sure everybody in this room can attest to that. Your signature has changed over the years. And so what we do is, again, we have a bipartisan team of election judges for the signature verification. We actually go above and beyond the normal training. We actually bring in a signature and a handwriting expert to come in and assist, because this is how important it is. We have to make sure that these signatures are actually your signature. And so we verify that on your voter registration record. Now, if it is good and accepted, it goes on to the next stage. If they're going, I'm not liking this, I don't feel comfortable accepting this, it gets into a rejected status and it stops at that point, does not move on. Now for voters that do get rejected, we do send them a letter. They have up until 8 days after election day. Now remember that, 8 days after election day to return that affidavit if they're saying, yes, that was me, or no, it wasn't me. 8 days after election day. Now it goes on, this is where we have to make sure that we keep your ballot secret, because it's not only federal law, but it's Colorado Constitution that I am required to keep your ballot secret. Now, I've had a lot of people since 2020 come up to me and say, I need you to show me my ballot and exactly how it was counted. I will never be able to do that. And that is because underneath Colorado Constitution, it's your right to have a private ballot. And so with that, your opening board is a process that makes sure that your constitutional right of a secret ballot is done. And so they're the ones that go through and separate their ballot from the envelope. As soon as that point, I will never be able to tie your ballot back to you. As soon as it gets through that process, then it obviously goes on to our counting board. Now, during this time, again, I mentioned how many have come in through the receiving board. Then we go through and we make batches of 100. And every time a ballot gets removed out of that 100 batch, we have an audit log and paper trail of that. So again, that is how we're using our checks and balances throughout the whole entire process to make sure that if I had 10,000 ballots coming in on the receiving board, I had 5,000 that have made it through to the opening board. That means I have 5,000 rejected. I'm able to verify all of that. Then that means I've got 5,000 going on to counting. And by the end of the day, I know, okay, I have 10,000 that came in. I've got 5,000 over here. I've got 5,000 over here. Perfect, we match. We're good to go and close up for the day and come back the next day. So those are all the different checks and balances. That's really high level. But if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around for a little bit or answer any right now at this time.
Is there any one or two questions that are so hot that you just have to ask? Okay.
I'm gonna go first. I just want to make sure you share how people should, that they might get multiple ballots in the primary. So would you just share the information about that?
Unaffiliated, they are going to be able to get, if they didn't preference with us, which means they told us if they want the R or the D, you are a registered unaffiliated, we are required to send you both an R and a D ballot. So you will receive both in your packet. Please, if you are unaffiliated or know people that are unaffiliated, please make sure that they only return one. You don't get to vote one race here and one race here. That's not how that happens. If you do that, unfortunately, you completely nullify both of your ballots, and there's absolutely nothing me and my team can do. So with the unaffiliated, they will potentially get 2 ballots, and they only need to return one. The other one, they can, make a s'more out of.
Thank you.
Ted?
Yeah, some days my signature is very smooth and beautiful, and other days it has
Short and
a
choppy.
choppy to it. So in that case, I give a letter if they decide that my choppy sign in was not as much as my smooth register. And I'd have 8 days to let you guys know, yeah, that was really me.
That is correct. So our judges can.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, guys. So the question is, if you have a smooth signature normally, and then some days you have a choppy signature, then more than likely you get rejected, and what's kind of the process after that. And so, yes, if it gets rejected, we do send you a letter. You have up until 8 days after election day. And why that is important is because a lot of people think that I stopped counting on election day, and that's not true. I actually will continue to count ballots up until the 12th day after election day due to the cure process for voters who we just don't believe that is your signature or not. Yes.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
So pretty impressive processes that it sounds like we have in Colorado. My question is people that move over the boundaries of different states, and you mentioned like Eric, but it was like some states, not all states. Do you think that there's opportunity for fraud if not all the states have the same processes and not all of them work together to make sure that people moving around? I mean, is that possible? Because you're really speaking from Colorado, which is great. So just wanted your point of view on that.
Yes, so in ERIC, since the first adoption of it with 11 states, we're now up to, I believe, 46 states that are in the ERIC program. So we're just a few shy, and with those other states that aren't involved, we still have a process to where they will send us their information and we can send them theirs. Obviously, it's always going to be something that we're going to have to continue to work on because, again, not everybody remembers to update their voter registration record. And even if they move from out of or to a different state, they would need to put their Colorado information for us to get that initial notification outside of the ERIC program. Yeah. Now, the percentage of that, when they've done the national studies, it's in about a 3 to 4% statistic now of that actually potentially where it could be an overlap or delay. Still not an acceptable amount, but not enough to, especially on the federal level, affect any type of outcome of the election.
Jean threw her hand up really quick, so I'll let you in, Jean.
Thank you.
Hello, Jean.
So when we get closer to the election, you see people that are out with petitions saying, have you signed up to vote yet? And if not, sign up. But then they're not showing anything at that point for verification. Right? Or is it now going to go back and then look at what they did for their driver's license?
So voter registration drives is what Jean is referring to. Voter registration drives, they do and have the ability, they do get trained at the Secretary of State's office. Those voter registration drives, just due to the training and now also the laws we've been able to pass to kind of have more control over them. If they have an individual number and they even have like if I have the group number and my own individual number on that form. So when you see them outside of King Soopers or Walmart, because that's usually where they hang out, and they don't really go door to door anymore, but that's kind of where they're at, is at shopping areas. Those voter registration drives are required in a certain amount of time to actually turn those over to my office. And we actually, because you obviously have your signature date that you signed that form on there, if we notice that is outside that required time frame, we will escalate that up to the Secretary of State's office, and that voter registration drive could face penalties and fines. So they really know and understand that they've got more of a heavier foot on them now than they used to back in the early 2000s. But they do return that information. Again, with Colorado, I would really encourage, if you wanted to register to vote, you actually do it online through govotecolorado.gov instead of a voter registration drive, especially just with all of the identity theft that's happening. It makes me a little bit nervous that people use voter registration drives, because you are literally giving them your date of birth, your signature, your full name, your driver's license number, social security number. They're having a lot of that, but it's definitely something that's still around. It's not as prominent as it used to be, but they do have requirements to get those turned into us, and they could face quite a bit of a hefty stuff if they fail to do so.
Lots of information. Thank you so much for being with us.